Thank you. Very kind. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks so much. Thanks, Tiffany and Tina, for all of the chapter leaders of the Moms for Liberty. How about a round of applause for all of you? Thank you. You know, I do have to make this observation that you are the most cheerful, beautiful domestic terrorists I've ever seen. And that includes my wife, Michelle, who's a Mom for Liberty and a domestic terrorist, who's here. You know, Vivek and I have become really good friends over the last few years. It's never easy to follow him. And I told my son, Philip, who's sitting at the table, you are not coming on stage and sitting on my lap. He's a little bit taller than I am. It'd be awkward, mostly for him. But following Vivek is a small price to pay to be able to hear Vivek. And I hope, like me, you're as excited as so many Americans are to see more conservative voices, dare I say, younger conservative voices, entering the political conversation. Together, all ages, we can send a clear message to Washington that the status quo is indeed no longer acceptable. I really am thrilled to be with you today, and first because any day spent with Moms for Liberty is a good day, to Tiffany's comment, and also because this invitation gives me the opportunity to visit this great city, America's birthplace, the cradle of liberty, so close to her birthday. I'm sure most of you are taking advantage of the trip to see the sights around town. I'm sure you've taken time to see the most exciting historical site in this city. I speak, of course, of the Rocky statue. As a child of the 80s, that is a historical icon. But across town on Chestnut Street, as you know, there's another must-see spot even closer to patriots' hearts than the Italian Stallion. That, of course, is Independence Hall. I remember walking into Independence Hall for the first time. I grew up on the Gulf Coast. It's a long bus ride up here. I was in the 3rd grade. I was a fidgety 3rd grader. I'm now a fidgety non-3rd grader. And I remember becoming still in Independence Hall and then in front of the Liberty Bell. And it was on that trip that I realized I wanted to be a historian, as boring as that sounds, because of my love for this country. And it pains me as a historian, as an educator, now as a policy leader, but most of all, as a grateful child of this country, that so few American boys and girls would have that same sentiment, even though it's in their nature because of what our schools have done and not done to them. This little clique that has caused that problem goes by different names. I'm sure you'll hear them all this weekend, and you've heard them, some of them today. The woke, the globalist, the establishment, the coastal elite, the political class, the swamp. My favorite, though, is the Neiman Marxists. They hate it when we say that. They control different industries and institutions, from the media to the government to our schools and universities' corporate boardrooms. And that's really what we're going to be talking about today. I'm here today to talk to you about reclaiming our inheritance of 1776. And there's no better place to begin that project than here, where our founding fathers and mothers first stood up together for their rights, their liberty, and their new nation. History remembers that icon of Independence Hall for the grave, soul-stirring words written there. All men are created equal. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We the people. But it's a pithier, sharper sentence spoken here that distills the challenge before us. You've probably heard the story. At the end of the Constitutional Convention, as delegates emerged from their secret deliberations, a Philadelphia woman, one Mrs. Powell, asked Pennsylvania delegate Benjamin Franklin what kind of government the convention had given them. Franklin answered her, as you know, a republic, if you can keep it. Dr. Franklin's challenge feels so bracing still, 2 centuries later, not simply because we're gathered here in his hometown, but because today the nation born here just a few blocks away is increasingly misgoverned, misled, and outright attacked by a ruling elite that doesn't want us to keep our republic. In fact, they want to take it from us. Look no further than how our elected and unelected officials acted during the COVID pandemic. But for the purposes of winning back our country and keeping our republic, in spite of all of these attempts by the radical left to divide us, we must forge ahead. We must emphasize our similarities in spite of our differences, because we as Americans are the same as we've always been, and they, our political opponents, dare I say even enemies, are the same they have ever been. Today, we think of America's revolution, founding, and history as a heroic story about the triumph of the human spirit, the little guy standing up to the bullies, fighting for freedom against oppressors. But as you know, there are always some people who don't like a David and Goliath story. The Goliaths. In the 18th century, that was Europe's aristocracy. They hated the American Revolution and our Constitution because the fundamental idea of our nation is that here the people rule. We don't need the elites to tell us what to do. In the 19th century, when France's revolutionaries insisted that freedom required totalitarian oppression, it proved otherwise. And when a new generation of privileged landed elites in our own country declared that all men were not created equal, America rededicated itself to the principles of 1776. We fought, we reunited, and with malice toward none and charity toward all, we stood taller together as one. In the 20th century, when totalitarian ideologues around the world conflated patriotism with hate and equality with tyranny, America rescued most of the world from them. For 2 centuries, every generation of global elites looked down on American freedom and ended looking up at our success. Now, in the 21st century, following this symmetry in history, the so-called Great Awakening is just the latest iteration of the empire striking back. From Washington and Wall Street to Beijing and Brussels, they are coming for our freedom, for our Constitution, for our faith, and even for our children, all in the name of global order. They want to take from us our birthright as Americans. They say they want us to become citizens of the world, but in truth, they merely want us, just as in the 18th century, to be subjects of them. God bless you for rising up, for drawing a line in the sand, telling those who every day expect to impose their will on us, on our families, and our children, that never, 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 never will they succeed in doing so. Better still, you, like all of us at the Heritage Foundation, are tired of playing defense. Like the 56 men who had the spine to sign the Declaration of Independence, you've decided to go on offense. I'm here to tell you that every step of the way, in every fight, in every battle, with every hateful journalist, every protester, every attack on you, every single one, Heritage I will stand with you without exception. Don't ever give in. Not that you would. This weekend, you've already heard and will continue to hear about the strategies and tactics conservatives will need to defend ourselves and our nation from this fate, how to conserve our nation and everything we love about it. The speakers on this stage, as we just heard, for example, and in the breakout sessions, are among the most effective activists and conservative reformers of their generation. But you see, deep down, I'm just a historian. So I will let them talk about what conservatives need to do. I want to use my time to talk about what it is conservatives are trying to conserve. One of the best books ever written about America's unique culture of freedom is called The Roots of American Order by Russell Kirk. The Roots of American Order by Russell Kirk. You may have come across his most famous book, The Conservative Mind, which traces the history of conservative thought. But in The Roots of American Order, Kirk traces the ideas that make up the American way of life, and in particular, the four great traditions that led our forefathers to this city 236 Julys ago. America didn't invent the idea of ordered liberty. We inherited it from the West's four great cities of freedom that came before us: Jerusalem, Athens, Rome, and London. The first is obvious. All the moral principles on which America was founded and on which our society has flourished date back to the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, and the ancient kingdom of Israel. When our founders, in the Declaration of Independence, invoke the laws of nature and of nature's God, they aren't talking about Zeus or Thor. They're talking about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. From the Jewish people, the West inherited our greatest gift, the one on which all others rest, the knowledge of our good and loving God. All men are created equal was not a philosophical theory springing from the Enlightenment, but a revealed moral truth. Men are not equal in virtue or wisdom, talent or strength. The equality of the American founding is our moral equality as fallen creatures before a just creator who in his infinite mercy loves us nonetheless and taught us how to live according to his will. Human equality, God-given rights. These America owes to the God of Abraham, the holy, heroic people of Israel, and the city of Jerusalem. America's second inheritance comes from the city of Athens, democracy. In Abraham Lincoln's words, government of the people, by the people, for the people. 2,500 years ago in Athens, as you know, every citizen had a voice. Leaders were chosen and entrusted with power, not born or entitled to it. They served temporarily and subject to the will of the people. The people decided when to go to war, whether to levy taxes, and what public works to build. They were, in a way no people had ever been before in history, free. And from that freedom, the Greeks flourished. Classical Athens is as famous today for its ingenious philosophers, mathematicians, science, poetry, architecture, and art as much for its political innovations. Practically the only problem the Greek city-states couldn't solve was, as Russell Kirk put it, how to live with each other in peace and justice. They disputed, they fought, they bled each other white in costly conflicts because cooler heads couldn't be heard above the din of the crowd. In the end, the tragic lesson of Athenian democracy was that without order, liberty was doomed. Weakened by war, Greece, once the flower of civilization, soon fell to America's third great cultural ancestor, Rome. What fueled Rome's rise from a tiny trading village to an empire spanning 3 continents? One of the first sources of their success was what they learned from the Greeks. They built on Athenian innovations in science, engineering, military, and very importantly, politics. The Romans wouldn't repeat Athens' mistakes. In particular, instead of a pure democracy, they established a republic. They divided power between consuls, community representatives, and the Senate. Each checked the power of the other 2, harnessing ambitious Romans' talents to the good of the whole. In time, this system was so successful and generated so much wealth and power that Roman culture turned decadent and the government unresponsive to the people. The Senate gave way to Caesar and the Republic to an empire. As I say that, it reminds me so much of our nation's capital today. But the story didn't end there. Just as Rome learned from Athens, she learned something else from Jerusalem. Christianity, thank God, transcends politics. On the other hand, we have it on very good authority that Christians are salt of the earth. Their devotion always changes cultures, converts them, you might say. Christian devotion makes societies more just, more compassionate, more charitable, and more fruitful. Yet for all these virtues' collective value, the revolutionary truth at the heart of the gospel is the innate, infinite value of every single soul. Thanks to a particular Roman crucifixion in first century Jerusalem, human beings today are not only made in the image and likeness of God, but can be redeemed to him. As C.S. Lewis said, there are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal. The revelations of the New Testament empowered mankind to pursue the good, the beautiful, and the true as never before. And the lives of the apostles, saints, and martyrs give us a roadmap toward them. But as we all know, the virtuous road, as it has been throughout history, is still the one less traveled. Human nature doesn't change. And men, especially powerful men, tend to pursue their own self-interest first and foremost. That leads to the fourth city that made America, London. Everyone has heard of Magna Carta, but schools today don't focus on great moments in history these days. It takes too much time away from drag queen story hour and critical race theory. So, pardon the short history lesson. In the year 1215, England was ruled by an obnoxious thug. If you ever want to know how bad King John was, understand that he's not King John the First because there's never been a second. John was so bad that English kings stopped naming their sons by that name. Now, even 1,000 years ago, corrupt kings were not new. Throughout history, they've been resisted and some of them violently deposed. But English nobles knew how destructive civil wars could be. So they took a different tack. Instead of replacing their monarch, they redefined their monarchy. Through the Great Charter, Magna Carta, they forced the king to put limits on the crown's power, established Englishmen's rights from that moment forward, and set the law itself as the true legal authority in England. It's all there hundreds of years later in the Declaration of Independence. After the poetic preamble about unalienable rights and the consent of the governed, the rest of it reads, frankly, like a dry legal document. It's a prosecution. Most of the text is a simply plain-worded indictment of King George III's serial violations of the American colonists' rights as Englishmen. They didn't want to rebel. They just wanted the rights due them as English citizens. That's why the American Revolution was, at its core, a conservative revolution. In other words, it's appealing to this continuity, this understanding of rights dating back to not just 1215, but as you now know, to Jerusalem. For example, Thomas Jefferson's first draft of the Declaration was heartbroken about leaving our British brethren. He wrote, "We might have been a free and great people together, lamenting the reality. But when London forswore its own heritage of ordered liberty, America claimed it for its own." That is the radicalism of the American Revolution, the transfer of that cultural inheritance from London to Philadelphia. You see, that's how Philadelphia became the fifth city, growing taller and stronger from the roots of Jerusalem, Athens, Rome, and London. It is the legacy of the five cities that American conservatives today must now fight to conserve. Not simply because they represent our inheritance and the principles that make America exceptional, but because they are the true targets the woke left is attacking today. They are the precise things, I dare say, that got the majority of you active in Moms for Liberty. With every speaker they silence, every skeptic they cancel, every book they ban, or work of art they deface, including in the last few days, every truth they declare hate speech, the left hacks away at America's roots in Kirk's four cities. They want to overturn what G.K. Chesterton called the democracy of the dead, the bonds of faith, freedom, and fellowship we share with those who came before us, with those who don't look like us, with those who go to a different church than us. It's all our inheritance. And let's not kid ourselves. Their attacks have worked. Just look around. Look at the protesters outside this building. Think about the riots, the near anarchy that France is enduring. So we ask, in 2023, what about Jerusalem's faith? A majority of Americans today seldom or never attend religious services. Prayer and the Bible are banned in schools where pornography is permitted. Churches are threatened with bankruptcy if they don't endorse same-sex marriage. Anti-Semitic and anti-Christian crime is on the rise. Corporations that mock Christianity, like the Los Angeles Dodgers, a terrible baseball team to begin with, it's true, are held up as heroic, while children are suspended from public schools for T-shirts that say there are only two genders. What about Athenian democracy? Ask yourself, does it feel like the federal government works for you or the other way around? A close look at our justice system might offer an uncomfortable answer. Athenian freedom liberated mankind to search for truth in nature and science, whereas today, the left is at war with the truth about unborn babies, about the difference between boys and girls, about climate change, about masks and school closures, about the origins of COVID-19. What about the Roman separation of powers? Today, all our powerful institutions have joined together in one uniparty cabal. The media, the academy, big tech, big business, big government, all surveil us, censor us, manipulate us, prosecute us, dox us, cancel us. Meanwhile, individual freedom is being subsumed into the creepy zoology of woke identity groups. What about London and the rule of law? Look no further than our southern border, where fentanyl and criminals pour into our country. Look one block away at our crime-ridden streets with Soros-funded DAs, like the one right here in Philadelphia, who refuses to put criminals behind bars, who doesn't want you to meet. You may have heard IRS agents showed up unannounced at the home of a journalist the day he testified before Congress on the weaponization of government. You already know, better than all of us, what it means when the White House ordered the FBI to investigate moms and dads protesting corrupt school boards as domestic terrorists. You see, like they have for 236 years, elites today fear American independence, freedom, and heritage. They don't want our children to inherit liberty and truth because then they can't be ruled, they can't be bullied, they can't be intimidated or gaslighted or oppressed. This is why so much of their assault is aimed at our education system. The Marxists' long march through our institutions in America has indeed been working. Jerusalem, Athens, Rome, London, they are the real targets of the woke left's campaign of bigotry and lies. The elites know as well as we do that faith, equality, order, and the rule of law are essential to live in freedom, and they don't want us to live in freedom. The reason they are fighting so furiously now is that in the last few years, the West has started standing up to them. Just a few short years ago, starting in Northern Virginia, a few brave moms and dads, some of them here, stood up and said no to woke school boards, no to woke principals, and no to woke lawmakers. Ladies and gentlemen, you are the heroes. And your work is spreading throughout the country in nearly every school board meeting in America. You are the special forces of sustaining the cultural inheritance from these 5 great cities. God bless you for what you do. A few more brief considerations. Consider Brexit, the 2016 presidential election, the leadership of conservative governors like Glenn Youngkin, Greg Abbott, Brian Kemp, Kim Reynolds, and most especially and heroically by my friend, America's Governor, Ron DeSantis. I like him because he also wears boots. The brave moms and dads who stood up for their kids and said no to woke school boards, no to woke principals, no to woke lawmakers. They are the heroes who showed us all what can happen when Americans reclaim their rights and their heritage and fight for their freedom. So are the joyful warriors of Moms for Liberty. And on behalf of all the dads and husbands and kids for liberty out there, once again, I sincerely want to thank you for your heroism and your sacrifices. As I said earlier, I'll let other speakers talk strategy and tactics with you. My Heritage colleagues are here too, and they can talk about them if you would like. I want to move into closing by talking about goals. The America we want to rebuild for ourselves, but most importantly, the America we want to leave for our children and grandchildren. It's a future of smaller government and more powerful citizens. It's a future of more marriages and, frankly, more kids, happier families, stronger communities. It's a place where we talk more and tweet less, where schools teach and don't indoctrinate, where we spend more time in our pews and less on our screens. That future we envision is not a dream. It is our birthright. Building that fifth city is even today just a matter of rededicating ourselves to the best virtues of the other four. If we commit ourselves to our faith, our dignity, the truth, individual freedom, our constitutional republic, and the rule of law, the left simply can't stop us. The media and the ruling elites can't stop us. History makes very clear that when people of faith and courage dedicate themselves to freedom and justice and pledge their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor to that cause, nothing can stop them. You see, we, people in this room, this generation of Americans, we are the fifth city, the fulfillment of all the dreams fought for at the Valley of Elah and Jericho, at Salamis and Waterloo and Gettysburg, on the Catalonian Plains, at Omaha Beach, and yes, on Flight 93. It was the promise of fulfilling those dreams that inspired our founders, locked inside Independence Hall during the sweltering summer of 1776. And that just 18 months later, very near the city we're in, motivated George Washington and his army to fight the freezing, life-threatening, long winter at Valley Forge. How fitting, therefore, that you chose to meet in this great American city of Philadelphia, where the West once stood and now must stand again. Not to recreate the past, but to create a future worthy of the men and women who have loved, labored, and lost so much to bequeath us the gifts of their four cities, and worthy of the children who made us, as our founders walking the streets in 1776 here would say, moms and dads for liberty. The fifth city is a city still shining upon a hill. And it isn't just our birthright. It's our sons and daughters too. It's for them that we must remember Jerusalem, Athens, Rome, London, and Philadelphia. It's for them we must answer Ben Franklin's challenge and keep this great republic, which remains the most noble, inspiring social and political experiment in all of human history. Thank you for being this generation's greatest patriots. And may God bless you, and may He continue to bless this great land. Thank you.